Hello and welcome. My name is Whitney and I'm an anesthesia intern documenting my journey as I go through my first year of residency. I am currently on my first elective of the year, which happens to be ophthalmology, or pretty much just the medicine dealing with the eye. So, this is a 2 week elective course that I'm on, so I am halfway through it already. So, it's been a pretty quick one. And in today's video, I'll just talk about what the week looked like and some of the things that we did. So, let's go ahead and get into it. So throughout my intern year, I have, I think, 5 or 6 electives that I'll be doing. And it's kind of nice how my schedule is set up because it'll be a required course of some kind or rotation followed by an elective. And then it kind of just swaps between the two. And that's honestly kind of nice just because electives tend to be a little bit less time intensive and a little bit more relaxed. So it's nice to know that I'll be going from like a hard rotation to like an easier one and then kind of going back and forth through that way. I think that'll be really nice for me. I chose to do ophthalmology as one of my electives because I really didn't get much exposure to it in school. And I just figure with this year, I just want to see as much as I can and really get just like a wide base of different types of medicine. And I figured, like, why not? I can just do like a short course and just have a little bit of exposure to ophthalmology. When it came to picking my electives, I tried to do a mix of some things that I felt like would be really good for my anesthesia years in residency, and then there was others where I just was interested in them. So, for example, like I chose to do an anesthesia elective because I really want to like brush up on my skills before actually starting my more focused years of anesthesia. I also chose to do cardiology, which I think will be really helpful, and palliative care, which I think will be really helpful as well, just because there are going to be times when I'm working in the ICU and I feel like palliative care does come up quite a bit in that setting and in other settings as well. You just never know when you might need to have those kind of skills. So, those were some examples of electives that I feel like I just wanted to have a little bit of exposure to before going into my anesthesia years. But then there were things like ophthalmology, which, it could be helpful, but maybe just not quite as directly as the other electives. And I'm also doing, let's see, I think radiology is my last elective. And again, like that could be helpful, especially when working in like an ICU setting or anything like that. But I also just like never had a rotation of that in medical school. So I figured why not do that before I, like really focus in on what I'm doing with my career. So for ophthalmology this week, it's kind of unique in a way because ophthalmology is one of the specialties where you have both clinic time where you're seeing patients and like you have appointments to see them for either like medical conditions or like pre-op appointments or post-op appointments, but you also have surgery time, so time in the OR. And there's a couple of specialties that are like that out there, like OBGYN, ENT, even general surgery has clinic time. And some people actually really like that kind of balance between the two. So for me, what it looked like this week, just rotating on the service, is let's see, 3 of the days I worked this week were in the clinic, and one of the days was actually in the OR. And then I did have a day off. So it was really only a 4 day week. But a lot of the time was seen in clinic, and then the other part of my week was in the OR. So, for what we saw this week, I would say the vast majority of the patients have some kind of chronic eye issue going on. So, glaucoma was one that we saw a lot of, which is more of a chronic issue with the eyes. Cataracts was another one. We saw a couple of patients who have diabetes, and in those kind of patients, we need to check the internal structure of their eyes on a regular basis. So they come to the ophthalmologist and have a, like checkup of their eye just to make sure that there's no vision changes or anything like that. And I think that was probably the vast majority of patients we saw. But we did see some patients with more acute eye issues. Probably of that category, I would say post-op patients was probably the most common in terms of like they just got a surgery done the day before. And then, like where you just want to check up on them and make sure that they're still doing okay. But we did see some patients with other types of acute issues. Some of them actually had like trauma to the eye, so they just wanted to make sure that there was nothing wrong with the eyes themselves. Like they would go to the emergency room after something happened and they could do an evaluation there, but to get a full evaluation, a thorough one, going to the ophthalmologist to make sure that there's nothing going on inside the eye. We actually saw, I think, two patients, which isn't a lot, but that I wasn't expecting to see any. So I was kind of surprised, like how often it did come up. And then we also saw a patient or two that just had sudden vision changes. Like they woke up one day and both of their eyes were like very blurry in terms of vision, or one of them they like couldn't see out of one of their eyes. And those are a little bit more, I guess, kind of like scary. I didn't really think that I would be, I don't know if nervous is the right word, but like concerned in an ophthalmology appointment just because I didn't think we'd be seeing those kind of things. But there were some patients where it's like, oh my gosh, like you really think about like what they're going through, and it you kind of feel for them because it's kind of scary when there's something going on with your vision. So I was kind of surprised by that because there were definitely a couple of patient encounters where I found myself being like kind of taken aback by like how I was feeling for them. So was not expecting that, but it ended up being that way, which was not what I was expecting. Yeah. And then with our surgery day, it was pretty much all of a cataracts removal surgery. And I think during that day we saw like 15 of them. It was quite a few, actually. But they were really interesting to see. I don't know what exactly I was expecting, but the way that the OR was set up, we could actually see what's happening. Like the surgeon or the ophthalmologist, rather, would be, like at the patient's side with a microscope, like looking directly at the eye. But there was also a camera there. So everything he was doing was shown on a screen. So we could like watch that pretty easily. And yeah, again, I don't know what I was expecting, but it was really interesting to actually see what was going on because it wasn't like a subtle difference between the before and after. Like you see the first lens that has the cataracts, and you see the ophthalmologist like breaking it up and removing it. And then you see him putting in a new lens, and it's just like a night and day difference, even from what I'm seeing, as like a bystander. And I don't know, it was just really cool because you just know that this procedure is going to really help someone in their vision. And it was neat to see. I can remember being a medical student and we had a lecture, or several lectures, I should say, about the eye. And we had an ophthalmologist who came in and actually showed a video of someone doing surgery on an eye. And I remember that is when I decided I could never be an ophthalmologist. Just because I don't know, something about it just wigs me out, to seeing like sharp things close to the eye, and I don't know, it just like it wasn't for me. But I will say that I really did appreciate seeing it actually in action and just seeing the results that patient had pretty quickly. And it was very satisfying, and I wasn't expecting that. I also think it was really interesting to see the actual like delicacy of the procedure, just because it's not a very big place that you're working on, right? And you're doing just like very tiny movements, to the point where when I would look at the ophthalmologist, I didn't even look like his hand was moving, just because they're such fine, delicate movements. And it just seems like such a unique skill, and it was honestly very impressive. So I enjoyed being able to see it. I still don't think I could ever do it, but I really appreciate everything that goes into being able to do that kind of skill. All right, well, that's really all that I have for you guys today. It's definitely more of a straightforward, simple kind of week on this elective. It is shadowing. So, with this, I'm really just following the attending around and listening and asking questions, which is kind of nice just to not feel like I'm being evaluated. So, I really feel like I can learn and I can ask, like whatever kind of question I want, because I really am there to just learn, and I'm not trying to be, like the most impressive intern that he's ever seen. It also was really nice this week because the hours were a lot lighter on this elective, which is nice. I'll go ahead and bring up the hours that I worked this week just so we can see how many it actually was. But yep, here it is. So Sunday and Monday I had off, which was really nice. Monday was a holiday. And then Tuesday through Friday were half days. So I got to go in a little bit later, around 8:45, which is relaxing, and I could actually do things in the morning, which is nice. But then I got off at noon, so I could actually come home, have lunch, and then continue working on things. So in total, I only worked 13 and a quarter hours this week, which I didn't think I'd ever be working this many hours. This is like one day, or yeah, one day on some of my rotations, and I was not expecting this to ever happen, but it's definitely a nice welcome surprise. On my off time, I'm really just kind of doing things around the house, studying, working out, relaxing as well, which is nice. So I think these electives will come in handy. And I'll have to remind myself of this when I'm in those harder rotations, that there will be easier ones coming up, like my way. I don't think everything will be this easy, but I think there'll be a good balance between like really tough rotations and lighter ones. So thankfully, I'll have that to look forward to. All right, well, that is all that I have to say for today's video. Next week, I continue on with my ophthalmology elective, but I'm also doing something called Jeopardy, which is not the show Jeopardy, but something else, which I will talk about in next week's video. Okay, take care, everyone.